Good morning, everybody. Welcome to you all. Welcome to another Sunday with Newcastle Unitarians. It's lovely to see you all. You do all know me, but I'm Diana. I'm a member of the congregation, and today is an informal discussion service. First, though, I'm going to light our chalice with the International Council of Unitarians and Universalists April 2021 Global Chalice Lighting. Thank you to Louise for drawing my attention to this. These words are offered by, and I apologise if I mispronounce his name, Ndiho Kubwayo Jean Bosco, leader of the Assemblée des Chrétiens Unitariens du Burundi, which is the Unitarian Church of Burundi. Welcome into this holy time. How do people accept adversity that comes upon their lives? We light this chalice, being conscious that our nature expects much good to happen. Yet this does not prevent strong winds from striking us without any clear cause. Fire falls upon our possessions and consumes everything, and we find ourselves more hopeless than ever. That moment of despair separates us from our friends, our employees, our community, even our families, because we cannot meet their expectations. It is the time we curse instead of offering blessing. This is the time. This is the same time we judge instead of listen. In the time of despair, we isolate ourselves instead of expressing our thoughts and feelings. May this chalice sustain us, though the wind has struck us hard, though fire has fallen on us. May it bring us together. May this chalice be a symbol of unity, hope, and blessing. So be it. Now, welcome to this month's Discover and Discuss service, our informal service in which we enjoy some hymns, listen to a radio programme, and chat about our thoughts. Today's subject is the Japanese art of kintsugi, mending broken items, usually pottery, with gold. The word means golden joinery, and it links with the Eastern concept of wabi-sabi. It's a view that finds finds beauty in damage and imperfection, and also the concept of nushin, which means no mind, and embraces a sense of non-attachment and acceptance of change. In kintsugi, the artist highlights rather than hides damage, treating imperfection as part of the object's rich history, and becoming even more precious through the damage and repair. It can be a powerful symbol and philosophy for living life by accepting our imperfections, our failings, our broken parts, and healing and loving ourselves as we are. Right, time to have a discussion about what we've heard now. Has anyone got any thoughts that they'd like to share? Please wave and unmute yourself if you want to speak. Brian, I think you'd like to. Go ahead.
There's a British tradition of repairing. It's called Arrowdatism. It's a joke. Arrowdate.
Don't.
No?
Someone's going to have to explain that one to me. I'm sorry, I don't get it.
I'll do it, Brian.
It's an epoxy resin.
Okay.
Who?
Sorry, Brian. It's gone over my head, but I'm glad some people have got it.
It wasn't that good.
Sorry, I missed that. Thank you, Brian. Go ahead, Joe.
I was just going to say, I think a lot of people come to Unitarianism because things have been broken in their lives, in their religious lives. I think I come into that category to a certain extent. My Anglicanism got broken. My Roman Catholicism is in the process of breaking up. And I'm hoping somehow that Unitarianism will be that mixture of lacquer and gold dust that will stick me back together again.
Thank you, Jo. I think that will probably chime with many people. Thank you. Anyone else? Louise, please go ahead.
Thank you, Jo. Those were some beautiful words. I think it's interesting that they draw the parallel between the notion of kintsugi from Japan and Western ideas of beauty. I think at first I wondered if that was a little bit of a straw man, because I think there is a tradition in the West of appreciating imperfection, but I think in a sense we celebrate it as uniqueness perhaps rather than beauty. I suppose I'm thinking recently of a conversation I had with some friends with whom my hobby is sewing, theirs is knitting, and sometimes we meet on Zoom to talk about creating things. And one of them was speaking about some furniture looking at. She couldn't possibly afford it, but it was beautiful to look at. And what was interesting about this furniture maker is that people appreciate their pieces because of their uniqueness. Each one is individual, and quite often second-hand ones will sell for a great deal, and in sometimes cases people actually appreciate them more if they have some signs of wear. That's quite common, I think, among older works of art and older pieces of furniture and other created items. People in many ways appreciate them because they show some of their history. So I think the thing is we see that that's a sort of aesthetic you do see in the West. But I think they're right to say also that when we think of beauty, we do tend to think of something perhaps perfect, something symmetrical, and we use other words to describe the unique or the slightly altered or something that shows some signs of its wear.
Thank you, Louise. Very insightful. Thank you. David, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I was walking around a music shop, and you have all these pristine, beautiful guitars hanging around for about £1,000, £2,000 or something like that. You come across these road-worn guitars, which are brand new, and they're just messed up. The paint's scratched off and all the rest of it, and they go for about 3 times the price of a brand new, spanking, perfect one. It's because people just appreciate that, they think that they've been out on the road and they've got a history, which they haven't. But that's the idea behind it.
Thank you, David. Yes, I think there's a sense of if something has a certain amount of wear or damage, then it has more soul, perhaps a bit more life than something that's newly created, brand new. Jo, you've unmuted. Will you want to speak? Go ahead.
I was just going to say there's a word for that, isn't it? It's called distressing.
Yeah.
And that's to do with things like torn jeans and all sorts of stuff. I was once in the Treasurer's House in York and looking at some of the ceramics on display there. And somebody was standing around as usual with a notebook and coming across. And we had a bit of a conversation which went like this. Very soon, our methods of repairing ancient ceramics will be so good that you will not know that they were ever damaged. And I think that would be a great loss, because that's an eradication of history. And I think part of the interest of old objects is the fact, that they've got wrinkles, they've got a past. And I think the worst kind of restoration is something which restores something to an as-new condition. That might be fine when it comes to function, but when it comes to the spirituality of the object, and aren't the Japanese spiritual? Aren't they poetic? Aren't they wonderful? They obviously inhabit a completely different universe, which is so magical that I'd like to be part of that. Because I think we're quite good in the way at respecting people. I mean, not as good as we should be, but somehow we don't have the same veneration, except a few types like me, for objects. And I think objects have got souls too. They've got histories and personalities, and they can enrich our lives in incredible ways, sometimes when people aren't available.
Thank you, Jo. Thank you. Louise, go ahead.
Yes, one thing I notice as I've just been thinking now is it almost seems like I was thinking actually of an earlier service we had December, in which I think we had a reading from The Velveteen Rabbit, in which it's almost portrayed as though the beauty of the Velveteen Rabbit's original existence as the perfect toy is given up as he becomes real. Perhaps there's almost a tiny parallel, not you can stretch it too far, with the notion of the woman who's just talking about her experience of having surgery and the changes in her body afterwards. And it's interesting that we seem to have one standard of beauty, and it's as though it's almost like you must give it up rather than transitioning to another stage of beauty. And it's interesting what Joe was saying about objects and souls. I suppose I'm thinking also about the sale of our building. A few people have been surprised by my reaction that I think selling it is a good thing. But sometimes I have to explain to them, well, it's not as that I don't feel we're throwing it away or getting rid of it. I feel we're handing it over to a new stage in its life.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you. Right, does anyone have anything else, or shall we carry on with our programme? There, has anybody got any responses, any thoughts they'd like to share? Stephen first and then Brian. Stephen, unmute yourself.
Yeah, it's a couple of things. First one, perhaps rather personal or even trivial. That is that I find it very interesting to be reflecting on imperfection this week, having been thinking about perfection in preparation for and during the service last week. But the other is, I think I've probably reacted to the programme slightly differently from those who've spoken so far. So my reaction has been yes, but. So the yes part is, I think that absolutely we should accept that other people have imperfections, and that it is healthy for us spiritually to look to come to terms with and draw benefits from damaging events in our own lives. However, I feel the programme actually brushes over rather the reality of suffering. Not all pots are mended, if we can use the analogy. Some are not mended with gold; they're stapled together, like the pot that was sent over to China, rather roughly. So, I mean, to put that in less sort of metaphorical terms. I've been reflecting back on my own experience. I mean, as some of you know, I've had a chronic illness for nearly 40 years now, and of course, it does bring some, it brings some benefits. It brings a different perspective on life, and from having to spend a lot of time resting, that does give you some benefits. It gives you perhaps a more reflective outlook on life. But it's not something I would have chosen. It's still not something I would choose. It has meant, giving up quite a lot of other things in life. And so that is just a personal example. We also know, that, prisons are full of people with mental health problems, some of which come from damaging early experiences. Surely we can't say that having got through those experiences, that actually, their lives are necessarily better for it. So I'm overall, I can see some merit in aspects of what's said, but I also think that it's, as I said, it rather brushes over the reality of damage and suffering. Okay, sorry to put a damper on it, but that's what I think.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you very much. Brian.
I've just had somebody knock at my door, a neighbour who lives on the seafront, got 2 damaged hebe bushes, and he said, can he give them to me and can I revive them? And I said, I'll give it a go, and I'm more sheltered where I live. That's damage in action. I'm going to try and bring it back to life, these 2 bushes. So if I disappear, that's the guy dropping these bushes off.
Thank you, Brian. Good luck with your horticulture.
I'll try.
Thank you, everybody. I will end with a blessing and extinguish our chalice. May we accept ourselves as we are. May we accept others as they are. May we accept life as it arrives. May we celebrate our experiences, even when they hurt us, as they make us whole. May we offer loving, compassionate care to ourselves and our wounds. Thank you, everyone.